Welcome back. You're watching As It Happens. I'm joined here in the studio by Tasneem Essop as well as Professor Dirk Kotze, who is, of course, in our Pretoria studios. We're looking at President Cyril Ramaphosa's 100 days in office. Now, Tasneem, I want us to look now at what you believe are the things that he really hasn't done well, or where he has fallen short, or really not done anything at all.
Well, I think other than the things I've mentioned, which is setting up, trying to clean out institutions, setting up certain commissions and boosting public confidence, other than along those lines, and trying to get investment into the country. Other than those things, there hasn't been a lot else, right? And we really need to question you know, the political direction, as I was saying. So in terms of job creation, how are we going about that? Jobs Summit was touted in his speech. That's something that's happened before, actually, in the country. In terms of questions on land, the ANC held a land summit, but we really, I think we're struggling to get to a place where we have direction on the key questions here. Now, it's difficult because one does understand that you come into this with a certain mandate from the last elections, that we're still in a phase, you know, one cycle between elections, and that a lot of this may shift after the next elections. But nonetheless, I think that there's a lot of that that's uncertain. At the same time, the country has seen massive, you know, kind of protests, not just in the Northwest, but also, you know, in other parts of the country. In Gauteng, we've seen quite a number of protests, small, medium, and sometimes getting quite big, around a variety of issues, right? And that's the core of what is at the heart of a lot of the problems that people are facing. It's around...
What do you think he could have done?
So, I mean, so this has been a problem that has faced government for the last, you know, many years, right? Some would say since 2007, 2008, the kind of cycle of community protests. But I really think that what we need is a political direction on how to deal with this, right? How are we dealing with the concerns of people? How are we dealing with service delivery? And how are we improving service delivery at the very core of it, where people interact with services, where they need services, right? And at the same time, that links to how do you root out corruption at a deeper level? So it's not just about firing ministers at the top. It's not just about changing boards, but it's about what is the direction that Ramaphosa is giving to government at a level that goes deeper than what we've seen already. Now, as I said, it's difficult to judge on 100 days, but these are the things that we need to be asking at this stage.
Professor Kotze, where do you think he's been found wanting?
Well, I agree with the problem about service delivery, about local government and provincial government. And I think what I would have liked President Ramaphosa to do is to say, based, for example, on what has been revealed by the Auditor General's report about the fact that financial management is a very big issue at local government level, also the payment for services, and that the financial dimension of service delivery, that a specific plan has to be designed around that. We know that when Minister Pravin Gordhan was the Minister of Kokta, that he introduced this notion of back to basics as a program. And I think he will have to go back to that type of approach. At the same time, about the capacity at local government level and even at provincial government level, there's huge deficits with respect to that. And I think what he has done with respect to the economy, his approach of setting up groups, of setting up, for example, summits, that he should do the same with respect to local government and with service delivery, so at least that there is a plan in the pipeline. I don't expect that within 100 days he can solve it, but there must be some form of direction, there must be a strategy, and I think once there's a strategy and clarity on that, then the public will be more satisfied with it. But at the moment there's a void. There's a policy void, there's also a strategic void at this stage with respect to that. I think most people are saying he's paying so much attention to the economy and to matters related to the economy, including the land issue now, that he's actually not paying attention to the service delivery. And when it will come to next year's election, the ANC will be judged as government by both its performance on the economic level as well as the quality of government.
Tasneem, EFF leader Julius Malema says there's been a degeneration of the country under Cyril Ramaphosa's leadership, and he points to cash-in transit heists as now being uncontrollable, saying, and I quote, "You are weak, you are not firm, and criminals don't like weak people." Does he have a point?
Well, I mean, I don't know about his example, and, you know, it's very much tied to a whole range of social dynamics in the country, and I think, I mean, I can kind of see why and how he's making the argument, but I'm not sure about, you know, also the terminology. In our political discourse, when we talk about things like a weak president, you know, I think those are terms that we need to really substantiate and put some meat behind. So I'm also not sure about his example. Is that cash in transit heist, you know, really the best way to talk about what is it that's at the heart of degeneration, or the idea of degeneration? The idea of degeneration is often talked about morally in the country, and I mean, I would need to probably get more context from the speech to see if that's the kind of thing that was being hinted at. So, yeah, that's...
Professor Kotze, Musi Maimane says the reforms our country desperately needs are at odds with the ideology that President Ramaphosa's party still clings onto. What do you understand by that?
If I can speculate about it, I think what he means is that the ANC is still following a policy or an ideology or even philosophy that has been developed in the period before 1990, that there's still a very strong sort of statist approach, that it is against what the DA favors of more of a private sector approach, or a partnership between the private sector and the public sector. That there's maybe even, he will say, a sort of a socialist elements involved in the ANC, although the ANC isn't a socialist movement or a socialist party. And I think then also he will say that it's in a sense as stagnant. It is not vibrant, it is not flexible in terms of policy adjustments that have to be made, but it is rather stuck within a certain paradigm or framework which limits the ANC in terms of how they can adjust to situations. One aspect or one area which I think one can apply this to is the international relations of South Africa. The international relations, to a large extent, the principles are still those that were formulated or developed by the ANC before they were unbanned in 1990. And in that respect, I think it limits the options for South Africa with respect to its international relations. The same applies also to whom the ANC wants to have bilateral or other forms of relations in terms of trade, for example, as well as the way in which they form alliances. The government now wants to bid for a third term in the UN Security Council. And if you want to be in that position, you have to be very flexible in terms of how you conduct yourself at the international level. And I think sometimes the South African government or the ANC government finds it very difficult to be able to play that role at that level.
Tasneem, ANC leaders seem to believe that Cyril Ramaphosa is the guy who's going to make sure that they do indeed win come 2019, that he's the kind of a leader who will take them out of the quagmire that they have been in under Jacob Zuma's leadership. And as Ibrahim Patel said a couple of days ago in Parliament, it's now tough to be in opposition. Is it, though?
Yeah, I mean, in many respects, the major opposition party is also shooting themselves in the foot for the last 100 days. We could also, you know, judge that and how the DA has been really, you know, eating themselves. Over the next few months is what directions going to be given to the country, what are the policies, what are the big headlines that are going to come out that are going to try and get Ramaphosa, Ramaphoria, and the ANC continuing on this good public sentiment, you know, that they may have. But it is going to get a lot trickier as you move closer to elections. There's going to be a lot more scrutiny on what Ramaphosa has been doing over the last, as long as he's been in power by then. I mean, by the end of the year, we'll have many months to then judge his presidency on. There's going to be scrutiny on the ANC at a provincial level, because it's also a provincial election that we'll be voting on. And the opposition will have to get its own house in order before it goes to those elections. So it's going to get more and more difficult. And we've seen already in terms of the EFF, and I mean the statement that you've just given me, where the EFF was in the beginning willing to say, let's give Ramaphosa a chance. I mean, we could also critique that whole direction that the EFF was taking at that point, clapping, in Parliament and so on, to now already starting to poke holes, starting to find where are those loopholes that they can exploit in terms of going towards 2019 and showing how the ANC isn't the party of choice in those elections. So it's going to get tougher as we get closer.
Tasneem Essop, Professor Dirk Kotze, thanks to both of you for gracing us with your presence this evening. And that's how we come to the end of tonight's edition of As It Happens. My name is Vuyo Mvoko. Have a good weekend.